Hello there, welcome to another episode of Carnell Knowledge. My name is Tom Carnell, and this is a show I do 3 times a week. I drop it on Monday, on Wednesday, and on Friday, in which I review / recommend 5 movies, a book, and 5 records. I've been doing this for a while now. I just started doing shorts, little 3-minute videos reviewing. So far it's just movies, but I'll get around to some other things as well. If you don't know who I am, I was a buyer for Tower Records warehouse and record factory for about 15-20 years. Worked for Fangoria Dread Central, writing for them for about 15 years, and published Carpet Nocta magazine. Now I'm an author. You can go to Amazon and check out all of that stuff there. A couple of things. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the video. Like I said, I drop these like pretty regularly. I got about a month or so banked already. So there's more coming. And also, if you go into the comments, I will get back to you pretty quick. Do that with a great regularity. And also, if you look in the description of this video, you will find links to trailers or full movies that you can go out on YouTube and find, or there's a link to the Amazon page of whatever book I talk about, and then there's also full YouTube playlists of all of the records. That way you don't have to just take my word for it. If there's something that I talk about that sort of sounds interesting, just go into the description, click on the link. You can hear or see it all for yourself. Okay, if you have anything also, if you want to talk about, comment. And if you don't want to comment about it publicly, just go ahead and email me at tomcarnell@gmail.com. Moving on to this episode's, I got something in my mouth. This episode's movies. We're going to start in 1932 with a movie called The Monster Walks. It was directed by Fred R. Strayer, who directed The Vampire Bat. And it stars Misha Auer, who is in My Man Goffrey, Martha Maddox, who is in The Cat and the Canary, and Rex Leese. It has to do with people in an old dark house on a stormy night that are menaced by a killer ape. You know, like it happens a lot. It's a very early old dark house picture. I have kind of an affinity. I go into these jags where, I'm just coming out of one that I watch as many old dark house movies as I can. I'm kind of going into one now where I'm watching a lot of Yakuza and Polizioteschi films. I'll probably get back to horror films and dramas. I had a cracking drama coming up, by the way, to talk about. Not in this episode. I think it's the next episode. But anyway. The titular monster, aka the ape, never really leaves his cage in this, which is kind of surprising. I mean, it's hard to be menaced when the thing's locked into a cage. Also in the film, the killer's motivations doesn't make a lot of sense. I mean, he kills his own mother, and spoiler. But come on, it's 1932. And he doesn't bat an eye. But yeah, that kind of bugged me. This was made just 5 years after the first Sound movie, so a lot of these kind of films are just them forging their way, with the machete in hand. They're hacking at the bush and trying to figure out what works and what doesn't. A lot of it still holds over to the old silent films, so kind of be prepared for that. Strayer's direction is a bit restrained. It was, again, like he was experimenting with the new technology. Like most of the films done on what was called Poverty Row, The Monster Walks suffers from terribly low budget and even lower production values. It seems, in the early days of talkies and in silent films and that kind of thing, they were stage plays that were being adapted to motion pictures. So a lot of the productions can be what I call a little stage bound, where it's like one locked off shot and everyone sort of moves about as if it were a stage. Still, in the end, the movie is not without its charms. It goes down easy and quickly. It's just barely under an hour, and it has some amusing little moments. It's not a crucial film by any stretch, but, if you're clicking off films that are, old dark house movies, this is one that you should probably see. In the links in the description, there's a full movie link. It's here on YouTube. You can go check it out. speaking of poliziotteschi, 1976 is our next film. It's called Roma a Mano Armata, aka The Tough Ones, aka Rome at Gunpoint, aka Assault with a Deadly Weapon, aka Rome Armed to the Teeth. It's directed by the great Umberto Lenzi. He did a lot of these, and he also did a lot of horror films, and he's responsible for things like Cannibal Ferox, the much very controversial Cannibal Ferox, and also Nightmare City, which sort of was the first film, in my estimation, of fully running zombies. And I've talked about this movie before, but it's got a great little scene in Nightmare City where a patch of zombies invade what looks like a taping of a Solid Gold episode. It's like a dance thing. It's hilarious. This movie stars the great Maurizio Merli, the lantern-jawed Maurizio Merli. Also stars Arthur Kennedy, who is in Lawrence of Arabia. He was also in, I want to say, Breakfast at the Manchester Morgue, the Jorge Grau Spanish zombie film. And Ivan Razumov, who was in the great Man from Deep River. It was sort of a third world exploitation film. Here is the synopsis, as we say. A tough rule-bending cop pursues maniacal, trigger-happy hunchback. That's not really politically correct anymore, but they refer to this guy as a hunchback an awful lot. A one-handed robber and their cronies in an effort to bring Rome's most powerful crime lord to justice. This thing is a cornerstone poliziotteschi. If you were to list your top 5 of this kind of Italian crime drama, this would be one of them. It's one of the installments in the Inspector Tanzi film series. There's a script here by Dardano Sargetti, who did the script for Lucio Fulci's The Beyond and Lamberto Bava's Demons. It's got a great tagline. Inspector Tanzi makes Dirty Harry look like Mr. Clean. Come on, you gotta love that. Thomas Millian plays as the aforementioned hunchback. And it's funny because it appears in the third installment called The Cynic, the Rat, and the Fist, something I've already talked about here on this show, as the Chinaman. So both equally offensive, but again, we're talking like mid-70s, so that kind of stuff happened, unfortunately. Plot is whisper thin, the violence is over the top, just how audiences liked it back in the 70s. Maurizio Merli is at his snarling best. The rest of the cast is pretty adept and completely loathsome. The rap is typical of the time that you hear from Merli throughout these kind of films, that the system doesn't work and only violence can save us. The score is by Franco Michelizzi, who is great. I just picked up a bunch of Michelizzi scores, and they're fantastic. I'll give you a trigger warning. There's a butchering of an animal here in a slaughterhouse. There's a scene of rape. So if that kind of thing offends you, and I mean on some level it offends us all, be forewarned that it's in here, and that's unfortunate too. But again, it's the mid-70s, and that kind of thing happened a lot. Also, Inspector Tanzi kicks a lot of guys in what they call the eggs, and man, does he ever. And he's got a slap that you can hear from Italy. It's really amazing. Doesn't punch many people, but he slaps them pretty good. But ultimately, it's a parade of cliches and tropes, and yet somehow it all works and is sort of enjoyable. And hold on a second. Sorry about that. I lost my place on my notes. I had a whole array of notes laid out here, and I lost my place. Let's see. Our next film, 1965. It's called The Nanny, and it doesn't star Fran Drescher. Directed by Seth Holt, who directed The Great Blood from the Mummy's Tomb. It's written by Jimmy Sangster, who's sort of a staple around Hammer Horror Studios. And it's from a Evelyn Price novel. It stars James Villiers and Jill Bennett, who are both in For Your Eyes Only. Wendy Craig is in this, and it stars the great Betty Davis, who is rather restrained in this film. The synopsis, as we say around here, is as follows. There's just something not right when Bette Davis stars as an English nanny and her 12-year-old charge an emotionally disturbed murderer. Or is he a murderer or just an insolent brat? This is the last Hammer film that was filmed in black and white. I found that pretty interesting. They're in a really weedsy, tiny little role. Pamela Franklin, a very young Pamela Franklin, is in this. She was one of the I want to say the psychic character in Legend of Hell House. Anyway, throughout this and some of my research, I found that supposedly Bette Davis was kind of a bitch while making this. She was reportedly suffering from a flu, and she would routinely walk around the set drinking from people's glasses and coughing in their face, which, come on, Betty. The role of the nanny was originally intended for Greer Garson, but her agents got to her and said, this is going to be terrible for your career. And so she kind of backed out of it. Davis was reportedly difficult to work with. And one of the things I found interesting was that, according to Marcus Hearn in the book The Hammer Vault, Davis unsuccessfully tried to seduce producer and writer Jimmy Sangster. And this is not a young Bette Davis. This is a fairly old Bette Davis, but she's out there swinging to pitches, as they say. The timeline in all of this goes pretty much whatever happened to Baby Jane, Hush Hush Sweet Charlotte, and then she did The Nanny right after it. In this film, Bette Davis sports some crazy eyebrows, big, thick eyebrows, which are, yeah. Every character in this film is either damaged or borderline crazy. But, you know, the direction's solid. The film lacks the usual flair of a Hammer film. Again, it was in black and white, and you kind of come to Hammer for those really sumptuous sets, those beautiful costumes, and that really pop in color, but not to be had. Davis seems like she's on autopilot throughout this film, especially given her performances in the films I just listed that were in her filmography. Sadly, by the time we get to the big reveal, you can kind of see it coming up Main Street, and no one really gives a shit about it. The menace rests solely on Bette Davis and her reputation and her filmography. So, you know, in the end, it's a fair to midland psychological thriller. It's interesting mostly because of its relationship to the Hammer legacy and because Bette Davis is in it. Other than that, it was okay. It's a nice afternoon picture. You don't have to think too hard about it. You can kind of know where you're going by the time the credits roll, and the resolution isn't much of a surprise. But again, terrific performances. It's filmed in beautiful black and white, and yeah, so that's good stuff. Moving on, 1956. Our next film is called KYUKETSU-GA, aka The Vampire Moth. It's directed by Nobuo Nakagawa, who did Ultraman Leo. Stars Ryo Ikebi, who was in Pale Flower, Asami Kuji, and Ichiro Arishima, who was in King Kong vs. Godzilla. The synopsis is the story of a professional nude model stalked by a bizarre unknown man wearing a hideous mask. It's based on a novel by Seisho Yokomitsu. Oddly, there's no vampire in it. Again, for a film called The Vampire Moth, you would think that there would be at least one vampire in it, but there's none. There's barely any moths in it, to be honest. So, Tom, why did you gravitate towards this? Well, I'll ask you. Thanks for asking. I was reading something, and it purported that this film was a Japanese giallo, which really piqued my interest. Later on, I want to say on Friday, I'll be talking about a Korean-made giallo, but Japanese giallo you just don't hear about. So that perked my interest, and that was enough to sit down and watch it. Filmed in sort of a crisp black and white again. It's a thoroughly modern film for 1956. Everyone's dressed in regular clothes. There's no samurai in it. There's not even Yakuza in it. It's nothing like that. It's reminiscent of a couple things. Mario Bava's Blood and Black Lace and also it reminded me a little of The Cat and the Canary. It's very sort of noir-like in its sort of presentation, and for some reason, it's been described in some of the things I've been reading as Japan's first vampire film, which doesn't seem to ring true. Anyway, the main inspector, played by Ryo Ikebe, is a calm, cool-headed gumshoe who, from the moment he comes on screen, is destined to be our intuitive crime solver. And sure enough, that's exactly what he is. There's a highly improbable and almost laughable reveal during a badly choreographed dance scene, which is kind of weird. But in the end, the Vampire Moth is nothing like it's advertised. It's not a vampire film. It's more of a werewolf film. If it's anything, they make some allusions to lycanthropy. And it has very little to do with Moth. And it's not much of a giallo. What it is a fairly standard, albeit good enough crime drama, made novel by its setting and some of the cultural differences. Is it worth watching? Sure. The set design and direction are always interesting, and the acting is solid. And the tale is just different enough where it's nothing that you can go, oh, it's just like this. It's kind of its own thing. I'm still on the lookout for a Japanese giallo. I think that could potentially work. So, moving on to our last film from 2005. I've covered a lot of David Gregory films in the past. He's a documentarian, and he does some really great stuff. He did a film in 2005 called Ban the Sadist Video. This thing is an in-depth analysis of what they used to call in Britain the video nasty. In the 80s, as the rollout for home video was happening, they were finding, at least people in England were finding, that there wasn't a lot of gatekeeping as far as who was renting what. So they were finding a lot of children were going home with what a lot of people deemed to be inappropriate things. 10-year-olds renting things like Cannibal Holocaust. That's not really in keeping with the spirit of a rating sort of system. The documentary was released as part of Anchor Bay's UK box to the band. It was a DVD set that had a bunch of the video nasties in it. It details the rise and subsequent censoring of the video revolution in Britain. As always, these kind of things are mostly just talking heads, interspersed with clips from the aforementioned objectionable film. While it's interesting, the information gets pretty redundant. I could have easily trimmed a half hour out of its runtime, which was about an hour and a half, a little over an hour and a half. It's well made. The villains are villainy. The people who are, the conservative watchdogs and we have them here in our country as well, who are pretty uninformed. At one point, one of the main drivers of the Video Nasty campaign was saying about a film, oh, I haven't seen it, but I've heard it's terrible. Well, all right, thanks. But it's succeeded in, on one hand, banning a lot of the films from your average British citizen's VCR. On the other hand, it put a stink on them, like an allure. People who normally would have never rented something called Dr. Butcher MD were now in search of it because they had heard of how utterly, shocking it was. So, little this, little that. All right, so moving on to books. As I said on the last show, I'm kind of making my way through my Kindle and sort of just clicking things off. Things that I've read and either liked, or things that I read or I didn't like. Which brings us to Mark Morris's book, After Sundown. It has 20 stories, 16 of which have been commissioned from top name people in the field. I've reviewed Mark Morris's book in the past. There was one, New Blood, #2, I think it was called. I didn't really like it. I think that there are certain things that are in his books that are stellar, and more often than not, they are things that you can find in other releases. And I rest a lot of it at this guy's feet. He picks either very good stories that have been elsewhere, reprints with people from Clout, and then he includes a lot of other things that they're fine. They're nothing that's gonna keep you up at night, but yeah. After Sundown sort of continues that trend. As always, again, with collections, including my own, I'll say the good, the bad, and the ugly apply. There's some things that are very, very good. There's some things that are okay. And there's some things that just don't work. And that's nobody's fault. It's just the way art works. Some of the stories, though, are well written, and their stories are fascinating. Some of the names that you'll see in the table of contents: Ramsey Campbell, Grady Hendrix, John Langan, Tim LeBon, Caterina Ward. It's presently selling on Amazon for $6.99 for your Kindle. I'd say wait for a sale. But the book was nominated for a Shirley Jackson and a British Fantasy Award, so what the hell do I know? I just know that it didn't resonate with me, and so this is not so much of a recommendation as a review. Moving on to our records of the week. Boy, do I got some good stuff for you. Let's start with my pick of the week. 2026. I'm going to butcher the pronunciation of this. It's yttriphir, yttriphir. The record is called Solipsis. It's from the great Michael Plaster, who was released records in the past under the name Soul Whirling Somewhere, who I mentioned numerous times before, and I'm not even going to bury the lead here. I love this record. I've not heard anything that he's done that I didn't absolutely adore. So there's that. But I will say this. On all of his stuff, there's a pervasive sense of otherness and sort of isolation and melancholy, which for me, that's blood in the water. I love that kind of sound and that kind of tone and mood to a lot of my music. So yeah, it's available through Sam Rosenthal and Project. Project's another entity that you can kind of go to their website and grab blind, and you'll get some good stuff. I found this record to be soothing and gently haunting. It's kind of a film score in search of its film. I'd love to see this guy do a film score. It would be awesome. Slow, happy in its place, but lush and beautiful, spatial, airy, and definitely of importance. I kept coming back to this. I would listen to it, and then I'd go away and do some stuff. And then when I came back to my player, I would grab this. And I really love Michael's stuff. I think it's just absolutely great. It reminded me of things like The Lonely Bell, Biosphere, Black Tape for a Blue Girl, Love Spirals Downwards. Pick a project band, and you're kind of right in that warm little vibe. But yeah, give this a chance. You can find it on Bandcamp to get a listen to it. You can go down there and find a link to it. This is a great record, and I can't wait to hear what else this guy's got up his sleeve. Moving on to our second record, 1999. The band Tribal Tech, who is Scott Henderson on guitar and Gary Willis on bass, did a record called Thick. This is straight up fusion, jazz fusion. It's a burner, almost too much so, if you know what I'm saying. But it can feel a little frenetic and a little almost too improvisational, a tad noodly, but it's a great record. I very much enjoyed it. The music reminds me of things like Chick Corea's Electric Band, Planet X, the Dave Weckl Band, Mahavishnu. There's a little Alan Holdsworth in there, the Aristocrats, Steve Smith and Vital Information, Jimmy Haslip, Frank Gambale, and Mike Stern. This is a burner. This is like for a lot of guitar players will really dig this. Let's see. Moving on to the next one. This just came out like in the last couple of days. I'm a big fan of the Italian prog rock fusion band Arti and Mestieri. If you get my book, Monolith Records, they're featured pretty prominently in it. I love these guys. They were formed in 1974 in Italy. They have their leader is a guy named Furio Shiriko, who's their drummer. And this guy is crazy. It is some of the most, there used to be a thing when I was playing, you know, people would be like, don't overplay. Shiriko overplays, like he could be doing a ballad and he's doing snap rolls across his drum kit. He's insane. It all fits the music and it all is fantastic. But yeah, he's not a drummer who's content. You know, Ringo Starr, he's not. You know, he's not just going to hold down 4. It's his own instrument, and it's very, 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 very cool. Absolutely fantastic. Technical, but never sacrifices melody for showing off. A banger of a record. I would describe this record as athletic. Reminded me of a bunch of Italian prog bands, although a little bit better than some. Things like Museo Rosenbach, Latte Emilie, both of which I think Latte Emilie I've covered here on the show. I haven't gotten around to Museo Rosenbach yet. Locanda della Fate, Daedalus, there's some Goblin in there. Keep Goblin in your mind for a second. Aria, Aquafragile, Maxophone, Quella Vecchia Locando, and Apotheosi. It's a great record. It's called D-BRANE. I don't know if I said that. D-BRANE. It's just out now. You can find it either on Spotify or I'm sure it's out there on YouTube. Go to the link. But it's fantastic. Really great stuff. Up next, in 2019, the artist is named Ayumi Ishito. The record is called Midnight Cinema. This is a sax player from Brooklyn who, man, she's awesome. Just really, really awesome. The band is hot. It's distinctly like new jazz. The songs do get a little noodly. I think a lot of sax players' records can get a little noodly. But boy, it was really something else. I imagine that this record could be challenging to people who don't like new jazz. It's very complex, but stick with it. It'll grow on you. It grew on me, and I'm a big fan now. Reminded me of things like Dave Agee, Dave Gisley Trio, Hiromi Uehara, Toshiko Akiyoshi, and Mimi Yamanaka. Great stuff. And she's got a couple of records out that I'm slowly working my way through. And they're just absolutely fantastic. And our last record, it's from 2015. It's just been reissued. Ken was talking about it on Laser's Edge on YouTube. Check him out. Goblin, 4 of a Kind. This incarnation of the band, now remember, there are currently 4 different versions of Goblin out there. Goblin, New Goblin, Claudio Simonetti's Goblin. I want to say even they reformed Cherry 5, which is the band they were before they were Goblin. But this incarnation features Fabio Pignatelli, Agostino Marangiolo, Massimo Moriarty, and Maurizio Guarani. You'll notice there's not any Claudio Simonetti, who's off doing his own thing. This is more stylized prog rock, Italian prog rock, than on Goblin's film scores. And it's a great record. At times, it reminds me more of things like Roller, which ended up being used as a soundtrack for George Romero's Martin, aka Vampire, but also their Il Fantastico Viaggio del Bagaroso Mark record that not a lot of people talk about. They'll talk about Suspiria, they'll talk about Profondo Rosso, but they never talk about Il Fantastico. Absolutely fantastic. I don't even know what to tell you. I'm a big Goblin fan, and when I hear them doing stuff that isn't so, like Claudio Simonetti has a very, like he has his eye on what's going to sell and what the fans like. But there's another side to this band that is really cool, and more in the Arti and Mestieri PFM kind of thing. Speaking of, it reminded me a lot of Fabio Frizzi, the scores of Fabio Frizzi, Walter Martino, and a grip of other everything I just said about Arti and Mestieri would apply to this Goblin record. Absolutely fantastic. And that's going to do it. I'll be back in a couple of days. I got a whole grip of other stuff going on. And again, I've started to do these shorts. I'm trying to do a thing where I watch a movie and then in the morning I jot down some thoughts and then I just pop up for a quick 3-minute review. So I've done a couple of very cool things, the Bachter's Omen and Lunatic Frog Women. So there's that. So I'll be back on Friday, a couple days from now. There we go. I'll see you then. Have a good day.